You're listening to Phantom Daily with Simon Marr on Phantom 105.2.
Now, a new book by Irish author John J. May claims that there is no hard evidence for evolution. The Origin of Species nonsense says that evolution is an unscientific hoax. This in itself is a pretty controversial premise, but even more controversy was thrown up in the media this week when it emerged that Minister for Science Conor Lenihan was due to launch the book. And to tell us about it, John J. May joins me on the line now. Afternoon, John.
Yeah, very good afternoon to you, Simon.
Good to have you with us on the programme. Now, we want to talk about the book in detail, but before we do that, let's get the Conor Lenihan bit out of the way. So tell us what happened there.
Well, I'll tell you what happened. Conor Lenihan's been a friend of mine for 20 years, and I started writing this book 2 years ago, and about a month ago I asked him, would he launch my book, and he said yes. And I was happy that he was the Minister for Science. And obviously that was a bonus. And yesterday, about 36 hours ago, he started to receive offensive emails from all over the world.
Right.
And he rang me and says, "John, do you mind to take down the Minister for Science?" I said, "No problem, Conor." And then I did that, and then he rang me a couple more times, and they were flooding in from all over the world, and he was getting an awful lot of stick. And then I started getting offensive emails. And then he said, "John, I want you to know," he said, "I believe in evolution." I said, "Great, we'll get up on Wednesday night at the launch of my book and tell people you believe in it. I don't care. You know, my book builds an argument against evolution."
Yeah.
Richard Dawkins says anyone who reads his books, the day they finish them, will never again believe in such dangerous nonsense, meaning God and etc., religion, etc. And I say most people who read my book, the day they finish it, will never again believe in such ridiculous nonsense.
I suppose the question has to be asked: would this be regarded as a religious book or taking a religious view maybe on how we've got here?
No, I've reared my 6 children with no religion. I'm proud to say religion has been a pox on the human race for thousands of years. But getting back to Conor Lenihan, I'm not a member of the Fianna Fáil party.
Yeah.
He's been a friend of mine for years. He's a great minister. And in today's Irish Independent, 2 writers, Fiat Kelly and Shane Hickey, say this, and I'm taking them up on this: anti-science author begs Lenihan to skip lunch.
Right.
Now, I guarantee you those 2 guys haven't even read my book. My book has the deepest, the highest respect for science, is based on science, and in fact I've 21 pages in the bibliography quoting the most eminent scientists in the world who do not believe in evolution.
Right. Tell us about, I suppose, in as much as you can, about the reasons why you doubt and seem to be like very, very passionately disbelieve the theory of evolution.
Well, my daughter gave me a book about 2.5 years ago in Boston that called A Child is Born by a Swedish guy, and it was magnificent.
Nielsen's book, wasn't it?
Yeah, Nielsen's book.
Yeah.
Brilliant, yeah. It's well done, Simon. And there was a lot of photographs in it and the text, and I was only mildly interested. Halfway through, I was fascinated at pregnancy, the majesty, the wonder of pregnancy, and by the end of it, yes, I was a little bit angry that how virtually the entire scientific community has been hoodwinked by Darwinian evolution, when many of them know in their hearts there's no real evidence. In fact, the chairman of the Human Genome, the group, the 12,000 scientists that mapped the human genome, Francis Collins, he believes that there's a great scientist, a first cause, a creator. So, and he was over tens of thousands of scientists.
Right, and I'm joined also on the line by lecturer in genetics at Trinity College, Aoife McGlyson as well. Afternoon, Aoife.
Good afternoon.
Hey, it's good
Hi.
Good to
Aoife,
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Good to have you with us on the show, Aoife. Evolution has been questioned by creationists and many others, in fairness, going back over years. But is there any particular debate about it in the scientific community in general?
No, in the scientific community it is utterly accepted. It's the basis for the field of biology. It's the reason we can see similarities across no matter what animals you look at, even plants and bacteria. And it's the reason that by studying bacteria, like my colleagues can understand general principles of life and of biology. We have a common ancestry. It's very clear. We can see it in the DNA. We share DNA across all life forms, and it is uncontroversial. We still discuss details of the mechanisms and some of the processes, but the principle of evolution and common ancestry and natural selection are not disputed.
Right. John, when you're in the book, you talk a lot about suppositions.
But can I just answer?
You can, yeah, but tell me. But I also just tell me the book mentions a lot about suppositions, and that there's you mentioned I think 1,500 suppositions that you think are being made.
Book, yeah.
But does everything not start with that, and then it's a matter of going and proving it? And is that not what has been done?
Yeah, well, Aoife has started. Aoife, I admire geneticists and I respect your profession deeply, but it's a fantasy to say that all geneticists do not believe in evolution. And Lynn Margulis, one of the greatest of all biologists...
Lynn Margulis is fabulous, yes.
Fabulous. I
yes,
admire her.
She's a brilliant evolutionary biologist.
Yes, she is. Brilliant. I love her writings. And every year she stands up at their conventions in the United States and asks, quote, "Stand up. Anybody here who can prove from a biochemical level unambiguously that one species ever evolved into a different species." And
what do you mean by prove at a biochemical level? Because this is the challenge you've set out, right? With your 10,000 prize. I'd like to win that prize. I've got some good causes I could donate it to.
Well, I hope you do, because the very fact that you've used the fantasy of bacteria, that's all their variation. The
fantasy?
No, bacteria is not a fantasy. The fantasy that somehow bacteria backs up the hoax of evolution. All it is variation.
Sorry, as far as I can tell, you've been talking uninterrupted on the radio throughout the whole day. So there's no fantasy here. We can see in the DNA that there is DNA that is shared between all life forms. You see it's more strongly shared, and it's more similar, more identical between more closely related animals. So we have very highly similar DNA with chimps, less similar with other primates, but we do have similarity with no matter what animal you pick up. We have similarity with wheat and any plants, and there are genes that we can identify that are common between us and bacteria. And there's no fantasy there at all. That's absolutely demonstrable.
Right. And when it comes then to, you mentioned things that there are very demonstrable. John, when it comes to evidence like this that seems to be, and we talk again and again about demonstrable, if stuff you've got to reach a certain level where you go, okay, that's proven, then why do we carry on? Why so vitriolic about it then?
The reality is that variation does not prove that one species evolved into another. Molecular biology is extremely complex, as the girl speaking will. I apologize for interrupting you, so I didn't mean to. So the reality is that no biologist in the world, either now or in the future, will be able to prove that one species ever changed into another species. And claiming that it did dishonours science.
So, John, can I just ask you, are you asking me to get a time machine and go back in time and watch it happen? I mean, I can see the evidence for it. I can see that we have human genes. For example, in my own research, we found human genes that have evolved from other DNA that is present in chimp but is not a gene. And we can describe the steps along the way. I cannot go back in time. I don't have a time machine. If you want me to take a time machine, you're asking for the impossible, and it's a ludicrous challenge. If you're talking about doing science, we can do science. We can look at the DNA, we can see the similarities, and we can understand it and interpret it.
And for just a question for both of you then, I suppose this is a sort of a debate that has gone on and will continue to go on, but I'm guessing that debate like this is healthy in science, or do you, maybe Aoife as a geneticist, feel that John's argument doesn't have merits? And likewise, John, coming from your perspective then, maybe Aoife first.
Well, I haven't seen any merits yet in John's argument. As far as I can understand it, he's saying the world is beautiful and fantastic and complex, which isn't something we need to disagree on. I completely agree.
Absolutely, yes,
and then he goes, therefore, it can't have evolved. And when he has that therefore it can't have evolved is where he abandons science and any kind of scientific reasoning completely.
And John, coming from your perspective then as well.
From my perspective, I have certainly not abandoned science. If you read my book, Aoife, you'll see that I admire science, I use science, I use credible scientists to make the point that...
You pick and choose, as far as I can tell, yeah.
Well, all of us. Richard Dawkins does that. We all do that. I don't mean to, but if you I'd like you to read my book, and then you would have some understanding of where I'm coming from. But to say that the DNA in apes and monkeys is similar to humans, of course that's true. You're 100% right there.
Explanation is there for that?
There's similar DNA in an earthworm.
Yes.
And in Richard Dawkins' book on page 6, he tells us that our ancestors are porcupines and pomegranates, and we're distant cousins to bananas and turnips. Now,
yes.
If you think that's credible just because there are molecular similarities in the genetic structure of some of the niacin or whatever it is in the human, there's 113 chemical elements in the human body, and then to draw the ridiculous conclusion that because there's similar DNA, that they're our ancestors, well, that's where we come from.
No, they're not our ancestors. We're not our ancestors. That's a misconception. It's not that we're saying they're our ancestors. It's that we share common ancestry, in that we've all come from this commonality, which is the single origin of life on this planet, and we're all descended from it in different ways, and we're occupying different niches. And yes, we do share common ancestors with bananas.
It really is. It is a fascinating debate, and I think it's a very healthy debate itself. The book itself by John J. May is called The Origin of Species Nonsense. And John, we'd like to thank you for joining us on the programme today, and best of luck with the launch. And Aoife McLeod, lecturer in genetics at Trinity College, thank you indeed for joining us on the show as well.
Thank you, Aoife.
You're listening to Phantom Daily with Simon Marr on Phantom 105.2.